Hello fishing friends, this is Matthew Trout Fishing 13 bringing you a special video on how I process trout and bottle it and pressure cooker it. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to be doing and showing you is how I prepare the fish to get ready to put in bottles. So I've already cleaned my trout. One of the things I want to do is I want to scrub out the bloodline because I'm going to be processing whole trout. I'm not going to remove the bones or skins and bottle them whole. That's the way I like them. So one of the things I do is just take a scrub brush and scrub out the bloodline. Make sure the bloodline is good and clean. The next thing I want to do is I'm just going to split down the one side of the spine. I'm going to cut the tail off. Then I'm going to cut it into small chunks. Now, I'm not removing any of the fins. The fins, the bones, and the skin, when it processes in the pressure cooker at 15 pounds, they all get very soft. One thing I did do when I cleaned this fish is I did de-slime it and remove most of the slime. That will give it a better, nice flavor. But I am leaving all the bones in, all the skin. That's just the way I like it. And you're not wasting anything. And the bones and the skin, the scales, at 15 pounds for 90 minutes, it all gets very soft. One of the ways that I've learned to clean my jars and sterilize them is to put water in them, just a little bit, get them damp, and put them in the microwave for 3 to 5 minutes. This is an excellent way to sterilize your jars. They're all sterile, and I'm going to start packing them. So, what I want to do is pack the jar so that the fish is about 3/4 of an inch to an inch from the top of the jar. And what we want to do is we want to just pack the jar completely full and nice and tight, so there's as few air spaces as possible. And stuff it down in there. Occasionally you need to cut the chunks a little bit smaller, get them stuff in there good. And press them in there so they're good and tight. Now, it will have some air spaces, but that's okay. It'll fill up with juice, with the juices that it processes. So just take time and fill up your jars and get them nice and full and get them as tight in there as possible. It's good, like I said, to have some little chunks so you can press them in there good and tight. That's the way you want it. Nice and tight with about an inch from the top, 3/4 of an inch from the top, just so it has some head space. I had an old friend, he grew up in Logan, and in the 1940s, their family would take their old logging truck and go up to Idaho to the Salmon River and catch red salmon that came up the Salmon River, and they would bring them home. His dad had a they'd use all the sawdust to store ice. They sold ice to the icemen, and they would use a bunch of ice and sawdust to bring the fish home in, and then they would bottle it all. His mom would. So I've got there's 10, 20, 21 jars from these 7 trout that I've canned. So here's the seasonings I'm going to use. I got this McCormick's Mesquite seasoning. I got some Phil Robertson Cajun seasoning. It's zesty, so it has a little bit of heat. The other thing I'm going to use is just regular old table salt. It's iodized table salt. And I'll give you a recipe that I've enjoyed. But let me tell you what you need to do when you're doing salt. If you just want to do plain salt, that's perfectly fine. That's the way that I did it for years and that my mother taught me. But the essential recipe for adding salt to your fish is 1 teaspoon per quart. We used to do quarts when I was a kid because we had a family and we opened up a jar of salmon. It was for the whole family. So 1 teaspoon per quart. So if you're doing pints, do a half a teaspoon. If you're doing these half pints, use 1/4 teaspoon. What I'm going to do for my recipe today is I'm going to use a half a teaspoon of this sweet mesquite. Now I looked at the ingredients here, and it's all just seasonings. Spices, has a little bit of sugar, a little bit of oil, citric acid, mesquite smoke, but it doesn't have any salt. But I want it to be a nice flavor, so I'm going to put a half a teaspoon of the sweet mesquite in there. So I want to have a good, robust flavor. This for next batch, I'm going to do this Cajun styling. This Cajun seasoning that's spicy and hot. I'm going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of this. It doesn't, like, I want to look to see the ingredients. Salt, spices. So the first ingredient is salt. So I'm going to use 1/8 of a teaspoon of this, and then 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, because I don't want to put too much salt in here. But you can experiment. One of the other good spices to add to your fish is lemon pepper. So look for lemon pepper. If it has salt in it, be cautious. Maybe experiment a little bit. Start with 1/8 of a teaspoon and then go to a 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt to each one of these Cajun seasonings. And then to the sweet mesquite, I'm going to put a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, because there wasn't really any salt at all in the sweet mesquite. Okay, now I'm done with seasoning. So one of the things I did to prep things is I boiled my lids. I turned it off, but I'm going to turn it on again and boil them just a little bit longer. So you want to do your lids here, and you want to make sure your lids, your bands are nice and clean. Sometimes they stay on, they get rusty. I've used these before. I just spray a little bit of Pam on them, some oil, or just take a cloth, but sometimes they're bowed up like that. That may not be the best thing to do, but still these will work. Most of these I've got from the secondhand store, but I'll go ahead and use them. We need to clean off the lids, so I'm going to do that next. And wet it down and put a little bit of vinegar on it and clean off the top of your rims really well. Because if you have any fish scurry or things like that on the top of your rim or a scale or something like that, it could prohibit lid from sealing properly. Check all your lids when you get done. If there's not one that's sealed, put it in the fridge and eat it within a week, you know. So if there's something that's poking up, press it down, clean all those lids. See, this one had scales on it, so I want to make sure I scrub that. Check your rim for any chips. This one has a little chip, it's on the outside, so it still has most of the rim left. If you have a great recipe, I'd love to hear about it. Share your recipe in the comments below. So far, one of my favorites has been using Montreal steak seasoning, and that was really good. So you can get this at the store, this liquid smoke. It's really good. I might try some with the Cajun. And what I like to do is add like a half a teaspoon. I think I'll do it with maybe just 3 little jars of this Cajun. Have a little bit of Cajun, a little bit of smoke. So I'm ready to do this. Put my bands and lids on. I got hot lids. And I like to do just a few at a time. Make sure I'm putting a hot lid on there. Good and sterile. And you just want to make it finger tight. Okay, because you want some air to come out as you vent it during the first phase of pressure cooking it. So I'm going to label those in just a minute. Okay, we're ready to load these into the pot. Let me just give you, I'll give you the instructions down below, but one of the things you want is you want to have something that keeps up off the bottom, so you need one of these pressure cooking racks. I have 2 of them because we're going to stack things. We got 21 jars. I'm using an All-American. And for the All-American, you need to oil the rim because it doesn't use a rubber seal. It just uses a tapered rim. But you need to use olive oil. Don't use like vegetable oil, regular plain old canola oil, vegetable oil, because that reacts with the aluminum and will turn into a mess like a sticky plastic. So use olive oil or Vaseline on your All-American. This is a 25 quart, so it's a nice pressure cooker. And so let's get loaded up. I started up and started on high. So let's get loaded up. And then I'll add a little bit more water. I'm going to put all this, I think I'm going to put all of the Mesquite on the bottom because it doesn't have a label. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to this. All-American, they recommend that you add like 2 inches of water in there. So that's enough. That comes up to about 2 inches on all those bottles. So again, you want to make sure you have your taper oiled with some olive oil or Vaseline. Then you want to make sure that you put your when you tighten things up, I start and tighten it up, and then I look at my seal to make sure it's even, and I just tighten it down so it just got a little bit of pressure. Check to make sure everything's even. If it's not, I tighten down the one that's on the opposite side first. That's a little bit high, and I go through and I give it one more little twist and tighten it up. For the pressure, we're going to use our, this one has a rattler that has 5, 10, 15. We're going to pressure cooker this fish at 15 psi. This also has a gauge on it, but we're going to let it vent for 10 minutes first. So I'm going to let it come up to temperature and start hissing. Once I hear it hissing, I'm going to let it vent for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to put this on 15 and adjust the temperature. I know that on my, I adjust it down to about 3 and 3/4, right up around 4, and that's the pressure that keeps it at 15 pounds. We're going to pressure cooker it for 90 minutes. For these little half pints, we could probably do it for 80 or 70, but I'm going to do it for 90 minutes just because that's the what time I always do it, for an hour and a half, and then we'll let it just naturally cool down itself. So the whole process of doing this takes about a little more than 2 hours before you can take it out. Okay, you can hear the pressure cooker starting to hiss, and so I'm going to vent it now for 10 minutes. So I'm just going to turn a little timer on my phone, or whatever timer you got, and vent it for 10 minutes. I like my phone because I can carry it around with me. When it comes off, I can go do something else. And when the timer goes off, I'm ready to put the weight on. Okay, it's really hissing well now. And it's got about 2 more minutes and I'll put the top back on. So when you put this lid on, be really careful how you do it. There's my timer. Okay, we're ready to put it on. So I like to come from the side and put it on the side like this. Just be careful because that steam is, well, it's nearly at 5 psi, so the steam could potentially be about 220 degrees or hotter and will just burn you really quick. So be careful when you put it on. So you can see the pressure rising. And this will have some water and stuff that will boil off. And that's just the steam coming off of there. Now, I let this climb all the way up to 10, 12, 15 degrees before I turn it down. And then when it starts rattling, I'll come in, I'll turn it down to about, on my burner, I'll turn it down to about right there. That's all I need. But for now, I'm going to keep it up, and I come back when I hear it rattling and when I see that come up. So I love to see the gauge and have also a rattler that tells me, because I don't have to monitor it so closely. Okay, so the pressure has got up to 15 pounds and the rattler has started. So I'm going to set my timer now for 90 minutes. Or an hour and 15 minutes, which is 75 minutes. That's what I did last time. That seems to be enough. So 90 minutes for pints and quarts, 75 minutes for half pints. So I got that started. So an hour and a half it'll be done. Then you just let it cool off. I turned this down to 4. It's up to 15 psi there. And this rattler, it doesn't need to go off constantly. It just needs to go off once in a while. So I'll set the temperature right around 4.25 and see how we do then. Okay, my timer just went off. 75 minutes has gone up, so I'm going to turn the heat off. And it'll take a couple minutes or a minute or so before it stops rattling, and then the pressure will slowly go down. So what we want to do is just wait until the pressure has gone all the way down to 0, and then we can take the lids off and use this little extractor to take the bottle lifter to lift the bottles out and lift them out. Okay, pressure's come down. I'm going to take this off. Be careful, it's hot. And let's take the bottles out. Be careful, the lid is hot. This aluminum is hot. This has a good vacuum on it. It'll be bubbling water. Okay, I'm going to tighten up these lids. You can hear all the lids starting to pop as they cool down a little bit, and get that good vacuum seal on there. So now that the bottles have mostly cooled down, I mean they're still warm to the touch, this is when I like to test them. And they should have kind of a hollow sound, and the little button on the dome lid should be flat. So they'll tighten up a little bit more as they cool down completely. But you know you have a good seal when they're boiling inside there. That means that there's such a good vacuum that the water is boiling at that vacuum. So this is very typical that the water or liquid only goes up to about right there, about halfway up. Sometimes if the fish is really moist, it'll go up farther, but that's okay. Like this one right here, it went up a little bit farther, but very nice ballfish. I had 21 jars that sealed, so I'm happy with that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Learning how to bottle your own fish and pressure cook them for preservation purposes. Plus it makes a very delicious snack or a delicious meal. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and give me a big thumbs up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day. Bye.